SADC is set to summon Zimbabwean authorities and representatives of the SADC Election Observer Mission to discuss contents of a damning report on Zimbabwe's just-ended elections. This was revealed on Wednesday by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa while speaking to SADC on the sidelines of the ongoing United Nations General Assembly in New York. According to SADC Observer Mission preliminary report, the Zimbabwean election, which ushered President Emmerson Mnangagwa back into power and restored ZANU-PF's parliamentary majority, was fraught with irregularities and did not meet regional and international benchmarks governing the running of credible polls. Ramaphosa, who has come under fire at home and abroad for both congratulating and attending Mnangagwa's inauguration, said the SADC Observer Mission report merely pointed out challenges to be addressed as opposed to it declaring the Zimbabwean call as invalid. He said,
as South Africa does every year in a General Assembly speech for the lifting of sanctions in Cuba, which is not in Africa to be clear, but also in Zimbabwe. I'll tell you what the US President wrote to Congress when they renewed the sanctions regime earlier this year. President Mnangagwa has not made necessary political and economic reforms that would warrant terminating the existing targeted sanctions program, citing continued repression and intimidation of citizens, absence of reforms on rule of law, democratic governance, and protection of human rights. They are also pointing to the SADC Observer Missions report that pointed to issues of credibility and process in terms of the election. Yet you, Mr. President, were at the inauguration, you congratulated President Mnangagwa. How do you thread that needle given what SADC has said and what the United States is saying?
Well, let's get it right. What was said by a representative of the Observer Mission is still got to be discussed in SADC because it's not a final report. And if one looks at that report, it actually says there were challenges with regard to a number of things that have to do with elections. And many countries around the world have such challenges. The United States is, a prime example with regard to their last election. So there are challenges, and they have said in the report, as I read it, that certain things need to be improved. They have not declared the election as invalid, unfree, and unfair. They have highlighted certain challenges.
Problems with transparency, independence, fairness, and credibility of all stages of the electoral process. That's what the report says.
Well, indeed. And those are challenges that need to be addressed.
Challenges that would be unacceptable in the South African context?
Well, where there's a lack of transparency, they need to come up with the details. And I would say, yes, let the details be put forward so that we can deal with them. So we are waiting to receive that report at the SADC level so that we can deal with it. Because if anything, it was an interim report. So once the report is put to the SADC body, we will then debate it, and we will also hear representations from Zimbabwe as well as from the Observer Mission as well.
Ramaphosa on Tuesday repeated his demands for the unconditional lifting of Western-imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe in his address to the United Nations General Assembly. He said sanctions were also hurting his country, which was forced to carry the burden of a calamitous Zimbabwean economy in one form or another. The South African leader is viewed as a disappointment by both his countrymen and Zimbabweans for failing to use his country's influential status as a regional leader and a model democracy to deal with the root causes of the troubled neighbors' endless crisis.